Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. My guest today is Amrullah Saleh. He is the vice presidential candidate on the slate with the incumbent president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani. The elections are scheduled for later this year. He was previously the head of the intelligence services from 2004 until 2010. He joins us via satellite from Kabul. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Mr. Saleh, there have been several rounds of talks between the U.S. and the Taliban in several places. We're told that there has been a framework agreement whereby the Taliban would commit not to harbor terrorist groups in Afghanistan anymore, and the U.S. would withdraw their troops. However, the Afghan government has not been party to those talks. How do you view those talks between the U.S. and the Taliban?
First of all, the Afghan government, President Ashraf Ghani, has said time and again that he ran on a platform of peace in 2014 election, and he introduced the idea and concept of peaceful settlement in a process called the Kabul process. And he has offered unconditional talks to the Taliban. But as far as the U.S. Taliban talks are concerned, our position has been very clear that while we are for peace and we want to settle the Afghan war peacefully, but we are capable of representing ourselves. And we are looking forward to see the ground prepared for direct state-led negotiations.
So are you hoping that the U.S. will actually help and facilitate talks between your government and the Taliban, or do you think the U.S. is trying to negotiate behind your back, essentially?
We're not thinking that the U.S. is negotiating behind our backs. There are things United States can talk to the Taliban about their own interest, about their own security concerns, but there comes a time and a boundary which is strictly of Afghan space and Afghan ownership and Afghan sovereignty. That is where we matter. And so the Afghan state-led talks with the Taliban has not started, and we are prepared for all scenarios. If they yes to the demands of the Afghan people who want peace and who want prosperity, or if they opt to go for more violence, we have capable security forces to keep them at bay and defend a constitutional and democratic space.
Right. Are you saying that the Afghan government, of which you were part until just very recently, is ready to join those talks? Or are you saying we want, first of all, to have clear conditions before eventually getting involved?
I mean, of course, this is a multi-layered. This has always been a multi-layered war. We do not necessarily object to United States, and we can't object to United States pursuing its interest and mitigating its security concern by resorting to whatever mechanism they deem and suit necessary for themselves. But when it comes to security, peace, and the future of Afghanistan, this is our land, we own it, and we are ready to do our own talking.
Right, but so you would be ready to send a negotiating team with the Taliban before the next elections, if there's such an offer by the Taliban?
Well, you see, our relationship with the United States is a foundational relationship. It's a state-to-state relationship, and we have signed a strategic partnership agreement with them. We have signed a bilateral security agreement with them, and there is a status of force agreement between the two countries and between the two governments. United States keeps reassuring us that they have not, and they are not going to represent the Afghan state in any of those talks. And they clearly say they are not substitute for Afghan representation. So therefore, we are not seeing the current process as necessarily a mechanism for bringing peace to Afghanistan, because we are not involved in it.
Right. So you're saying you think that if they continue in this format, those talks are likely to fail?
Well, I don't want to speculate, and I don't want to be critical. All I am saying is we as the Afghans are a factor. And we are an undeniable and unignorable factor. This is our country, and there is a functioning state, there is a functioning government, which is representing the Afghan people. And the solution, the sustainable solution, is for this government, for the state structures, to fully own and control the process, and thus be the tool for enforcement of any settlement agreement which will be reached in the future.
Right. Do you sense that just like they've done in other places, including most recently in Syria, the Trump administration is essentially looking for a way to quickly pull the US troops out of Afghanistan, and that this could indeed mean that they want a quick solution with the Taliban that might not satisfy your conditions?
We have to look at it from different aspects. First of all, the cost of war. The cost of war for United States has dramatically decreased in Afghanistan because the Afghan forces have now the lead role, and they are being assisted and trained by our international allies, in which the leading role is with the United States. So therefore, the cost is not so much of a factor. Then there is the issue of the casualties. Of course, there should be zero casualties. But if you compare the last 4 years with the beginning of the conflict here, the United States Army casualties in Afghanistan has substantially decreased. So therefore, it is not a bloody conflict for them. So taking into consideration that United States is not as heavily involved as it is perceived, I am not so sure that they are under compulsion to do a quick withdrawal.
Right. I want to get to the issue of Pakistan. You've often criticized your neighbor. Just very recently, the Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan hinted at a possible interim government to break the deadlock in the peace process, since then Afghanistan has recalled its ambassador to Pakistan. What is your reaction? Why not set up such an interim government to try to reach a peace?
I want to borrow a very good phrase from United States Ambassador to Kabul, Ambassador John Bass, who tweeted this afternoon telling Imran Khan that Afghanistan is not a cricket ball to be tampered. So he should understand that he is now in seat of power and he's not a cricketer, and he should be very careful with a country which is very old, which is very proud, and which is also, in a way, far mature than his. We are poor, and that is the clear fact. But we are too heavy for Imran Khan to tamper with.
Mr. Saleh, is it your impression that the Prime Minister of Pakistan, in saying this, is trying to subdue Afghanistan to show Pakistan's will and power?
Well, the thing is, the Pakistani policy on Afghanistan has been very inflexible, very dogmatic, militaristic, run by military interests, intelligence interests. Unfortunately, they lack any other perspective like economy, like people-to-people exchange, etc., etc. So, yes, their policy has caused a lot of bloodshed in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, their regrettable and terror-centric policy on the issue of Afghanistan has also caused a stagnation for Pakistan. And they are not seen a progressive country. They are also seen as a country sponsoring terror. What we are communicating to Pakistanis is, we can be your allies, but we will never bow to you. So if you want to force us into accepting your dominance, it will never happen.
One last question. A recent book by a Dutch journalist claims that Mullah Omar, who was the Taliban leader, actually was hiding until his death in 2013 in Afghanistan and not in Pakistan as widely believed. What is your reaction to this claim?
I think her book is more like Taliban Harry Potters than anything of factual importance, and she can be a good fiction writer.
So you're saying this is wrong? He actually was hiding and was killed in Pakistan, correct?
Well, as I told you, she should try to write more fictions, because her book is more of a bizarre fiction than a fact-based research.
Right. Just a very last question. The elections have been postponed. Is now the date firm that they will happen in late September?
Yes, but that's the decision of the Election Commission of Afghanistan, which we didn't like. But as you know, the commissioners were not appointed by the president. They were selected by all candidates, and there are 18 presidential candidates. We are dismayed by their decision, but we respect it.
Okay, Amrullah Saleh, thank you very much for coming on the France 24 interview via satellite from Kabul. Thank you very much for watching it here on France 24.